Imagine you're dropped right into the middle of a freezing, desolate wilderness.
Oh, wow. Okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah, you are totally lost. The temperature's plummeting, and, panic is really starting to set in.
Right.
So you desperately reach into your survival pack and pull out a manual, hoping for, clear step-by-step instructions on how to build a fire or find shelter. You just want to make it through the night.
You need practical mechanics. You need an actionable path forward.
Exactly. But instead of actionable advice, you open the book and find this deeply philosophical, winding essay on the abstract nature of thermodynamics.
Oh, no. That is not helpful.
Right. It describes the beauty of heat, but it gives you absolutely zero tools to actually create it. You would be incredibly frustrated.
It would be terrifying, frankly, because when you are out in the cold and your survival is on the line, high-level theory doesn't keep you warm.
And honestly, that scenario perfectly captures how navigating modern life feels for so many of us right now. We're freezing in this bizarre blizzard of constant digital connection.
Yeah, yet somehow experiencing the most profound, pervasive loneliness in human history.
It's so true. We are absolutely drowning in a sea of data and information, but we are, completely starved for actual grounded meaning. The cultural anxiety we're dealing with is palpable.
Which brings us to the subject of today's deep dive. We are looking at a text that directly addresses that freezing wilderness.
Yes.
It's called Decoding Jesus, Timeless Wisdom for a Modern Life. And it is, in my view, one of the most compelling and rigorously argued nonfiction releases of the season.
I have been looking forward to this discussion all week.
Same here, because it completely refuses to just give you that abstract essay on warmth.
Right, and just to set the mission for you listening, we are not here today to dissect ancient theology.
Not at all.
We aren't going to debate historical doctrine or get bogged down in religious dogma. Our mission, as your guides today, is to explore the profound vibe, the intellectual depth, and the deeply relevant emotional stakes of this book.
Because the author has taken a historical figure burdened by 2 millennia of heavy dogma and, entirely stripped it back to the studs.
They've effectively reverse-engineered these ancient texts.
Exactly. And when you strip away the institutional layers, what you uncover is this foundational blueprint for human psychology.
And universal principles.
Right. The author presents this ancient wisdom not as a set of rigid religious rules, but as an acute psychological survival strategy for the modern era.
Which means whether you consider yourself deeply spiritual, entirely skeptical, or anywhere in between, you really need to engage with the ideas we're going to cover today.
You really do.
The crushing modern anxiety we all feel requires a radically different approach to how we structure our lives. And this book provides a genuinely subversive framework.
A completely new operating system, really.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with how the author diagnoses the very world we are trying to survive in.
Yeah, you really can't grasp the impact of the book's solutions without first understanding its critique of our current environment.
The baseline of where we are.
Right. The author opens by highlighting our modern paradoxes. For instance, we claim to crave peace and mindfulness, yet we intentionally surround ourselves with algorithms designed to generate constant chatter.
And comparison and outrage.
Exactly. We have built an entire societal infrastructure around self-promotion and endless accumulation, and, it is actively making us miserable.
Oh, yes.
That systemic misery is the launching pad for the entire philosophy in this book.
And building off that launching pad, the book introduces what I view as the foundational core of this philosophy, which is the concept of agape.
This is where the intellectual rigor of the book becomes immediately apparent.
Yeah.
The author takes the concept of love, a word that has been entirely hollowed out by modern usage, and grounds it in its radical original context.
Think about how loosely we throw that word around today. I will casually say, oh, I love this slice of pizza, or, I love my new phone.
Or I love that streaming series.
Right. We have turned love into this incredibly versatile but ultimately diluted term for mere consumer preference.
It just means this brings me a fleeting sense of pleasure.
Exactly. But the author introduces agape not as a fuzzy feeling or a romantic spark or a consumer preference. They frame it as a gritty, demanding, and highly active decision.
Agape is presented as an unconditional concern for the holistic well-being of others, and that is entirely independent of their actions or whether they deserve it.
Which is huge.
It is. It's a conscious, sometimes excruciating decision to prioritize the ultimate good of another person. And the true test of this operating system is that it must be applied to your adversaries.
Wow. your adversaries. It's an active choice to will the good of the other. It's not about just politely tolerating the coworker who continuously undermines you.
No, it's about actively seeking their flourishing.
That is such a heavy cognitive and emotional lift in a culture fundamentally built on a cancel for a cancel or an eye for an eye digital mentality.
The author explores the deep psychological tension of that exact scenario. They break down how our modern instinct for self-preservation demands that we destroy our enemies.
Usually socially or reputationally online.
Right. But the text argues that this zero-sum game only accelerates our collective isolation. Choosing agape requires you to short-circuit your own biological instinct for retaliation.
Which is not easy.
Not at all. We won't spoil the specific modern examples the author uses, but seeing someone absorb hostility without returning it completely shifts how you evaluate your own interpersonal conflicts.
It's incredible. So if agape is the internal operating system, the natural next question is, what happens when an entire society tries to run on that code?
And that leads us to the author's concept of the upside-down kingdom.
Yes, the external world this philosophy is trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
And it completely subverts everything we are taught to value.
It is a profound societal inversion. The book unpacks a set of values that are aggressively countercultural.
Right.
It takes the Beatitudes, ideas like the meek inheriting the earth or the last being first, and strips away the poetic veneer to reveal a radical economic and social critique.
The paradoxes are just staggering. The author mounts a direct assault on the modern narrative that tells us our worth is directly tied to our ability to climb the corporate ladder.
Or accumulate massive wealth and prioritize status.
Yeah. They write extensively about the deceitfulness of wealth, exploring how the relentless pursuit of more actually creates a barrier between us and our shared humanity.
To illustrate this societal inversion, the author dives into the historical story of the widow's mite.
Oh, I loved this part.
It's so good. Picture the scene. You have wealthy individuals making a great show of dropping large bags of surplus gold into the temple treasury.
Making sure everyone sees them doing it.
Exactly. Then a destitute widow approaches and drops in 2 tiny copper coins, literally everything she has to live on.
Right.
The author uses this not as a quaint story about charity, but to prove that in the upside-down kingdom, true abundance and value are measured by the spirit of the gift.
And the vulnerability of the giver.
Yes, not the raw economic output. It redefines the very metric of a successful life, from accumulation to open-handed detachment.
I have to push back here, though, because I know exactly what someone listening is thinking right now.
Let's hear it.
In a cutthroat, corporate, heavily capitalized world, doesn't adopting this upside-down approach, being meek, focusing on humble service, detaching from wealth, doesn't that just guarantee you become a doormat?
That is the exact friction the author anticipates.
Because if you play by these rules, while everyone else is playing by the ruthless rules of the real world, you are going to get crushed.
And their response to that skepticism is a brilliant redefinition of influence. The book doesn't suggest you become a passive victim.
Okay.
Instead, it reframes servant leadership as the ultimate, most resilient form of power.
How so? Because usually, servant leadership is just a buzzword slapped on a corporate retreat whiteboard.
True, but the author breaks down the actual mechanics of it. Authoritarian, ladder-climbing power is inherently fragile.
Because everyone is gunning for your spot.
Right. It relies on fear, coercion, and constant defensive posturing. The moment you show weakness, your subordinates will overthrow you.
Okay, that makes sense.
But power built on humble service, where a leader actively sacrifices their own comfort to elevate their team, remove obstacles, and ensure the flourishing of the people below them, that creates fierce loyalty.
It fosters actual psychological safety.
Exactly. The author proves that empowering others doesn't diminish your authority. It anchors it in mutual trust rather than coercion. It flips the script on how to build sustainable organizations.
That distinction between fragile coercion and resilient empowerment makes so much sense.
The way the book frames this is something you absolutely have to read for yourself.
Yeah, but before you can reshape the external world or lead others, the book takes an intense pivot inward.
It really does.
It argues that to survive in this upside-down kingdom, you have to ruthlessly examine your own internal hypocrisy.
This is where the emotional stakes of the book hit their absolute peak.
Oh, yeah.
The text forces a confrontation with our authenticity, our pretense, and how we handle the wreckage of our past.
The author resurrects this vivid, visceral, historical imagery of the Pharisees. And for you listening who might not know the historical context, The Pharisees were like the ultimate religious rule followers.
Well, societal elite.
Right. They were the influencers, the people who had everything perfectly put together in public, but the text describes them as whitewashed tombs.
Such a powerful phrase.
It really is. They look pristine and beautiful on the outside, but inside they're full of decay, dead bones, and rot.
And the parallel drawn to our modern lives is devastating. We are all, in a sense, maintaining whitewashed tombs.
We really are.
We live deeply fragmented lives. We have our polished corporate persona for LinkedIn, our highly curated, filtered aesthetic for Instagram, and then a hidden, exhausted, deeply anxious self behind closed doors.
It's exhausting just maintaining it all.
It is. The author argues that true psychological coherence, what ancient texts might call righteousness, originates entirely from within.
Right.
It requires radical honesty about your own brokenness and dropping the exhausting pretense of perfection.
And a massive part of achieving that internal coherence is dealing with the people who have caused that brokenness.
Yes, the forgiveness aspect.
The book's approach to forgiveness completely stopped me in my tracks. It references the ancient command to forgive 70 times 7 times.
Which is essentially limitlessly.
Limitlessly, yeah.
What's fascinating here is how the author dismantles our modern understanding of what forgiveness actually is.
Because society tells us that holding a grudge is a protective measure.
Exactly. We believe that maintaining our anger keeps us safe, and that seeking retribution is synonymous with justice.
Right. We think if we forgive them, we are somehow letting them off the hook.
But the author points out that when you refuse to forgive, you are actually chaining yourself to the person who harmed you.
Wow.
The physiological and psychological load of carrying chronic resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
I love that analogy.
The author frames forgiveness not as a favor to the offender, but as a mechanism of immense psychological strength for yourself.
It's a unilateral internal shift.
Yes. You release the demand for retribution so that your own nervous system can finally heal.
And here's the crucial distinction the author makes, which I honestly believe is the most liberating concept in the entire book.
Separation.
Yeah, they clearly separate forgiveness from reconciliation.
It is a vital separation.
Yeah.
Because forgiveness is an internal, unilateral act. You can fully forgive someone who is entirely unrepentant.
Or someone who is toxic and no longer in your life.
Right. Because forgiveness is about your own internal release. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is the rebuilding of trust and relationship.
And that takes 2 people.
Exactly.
Oh.
That requires mutual effort, genuine repentance, changed behavior, and strict boundaries.
Realizing that you can forgive someone completely to free yourself without ever having to invite them back to your dinner table, it relieves so much immense pressure.
It removes the guilt of maintaining healthy boundaries.
It does. And those chapters dealing with this internal coherence are really the emotional core of the book.
That psychological liberation is profound, which brings the reader to a critical juncture.
Okay, where do we go next?
Well, you've cultivated this internal coherence, you've dropped the curated persona, and you've broken the chains of past resentments through unilateral forgiveness. So what comes next?
How do you step back into a chaotic world?
Right. How do you find your actual calling? The author sets the stage for this next phase by looking at the metaphor of the lilies of the field.
It's an argument for radical presence.
Yes. The idea is to find contentment amidst deep uncertainty by breaking the endless loop of anxiety about tomorrow.
And once you achieve that baseline of mindful presence, you are tasked with finding your unique contribution.
Right. The author explores the parable of the talents to illustrate this.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So a master leaves his servants with different amounts of talents, which were large sums of money in the historical context. 2 servants invest and multiply them, while one buries his in the ground out of fear.
But the author brilliantly shifts the focus away from literal money.
Yes, explaining that the talents represent our unique human gifts, our capacity for empathy, our organizational brilliance, our creativity.
And the real tragedy of that story isn't about, making a bad financial investment.
No. Not at all.
The tragedy is the servant who allowed fear, specifically the fear of failure and the fear of the master's judgment, to completely paralyze him. He buried his potential.
The author uses this to show that overcoming imposter syndrome and deploying your unique gifts for the greater good is the very essence of human purpose.
So you are grounded, you know your purpose, and you are stepping out into the world to deploy your gifts. But the world is inherently hostile.
Yes, it is.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do you handle active aggression without betraying that internal agape operating system? The book tackles the famous concept of turning the other cheek.
This section of the text is, without exaggeration, an intellectual revelation.
Because modern culture has conditioned us to believe that turning the other cheek means being a passive victim.
It's interpreted as, if someone hits you, be a doormat, submit to the host, and let them hit you again.
Right. But that is the exact misconception the author completely dismantles.
Yeah.
To understand what is actually happening, the author dives deep into the specific historical, cultural, and even biomechanical context of first-century Roman occupation.
Let's set the scene for this, because the details matter immensely.
They really do.
In that highly stratified honor-shame culture, a slap on the right cheek was not a standard punch thrown in a bar fight.
Right.
Most people are right-handed. To strike someone on their right cheek with your right hand, you cannot use an open palm or a closed fist. You have to use the back of your hand.
A backhand slap.
Precisely. A backhanded slap was a very specific, highly regulated action in that society.
It was an insult delivered strictly from a superior to an inferior.
Yes. A master to a slave, a Roman soldier to a Jewish subject. It was designed to humiliate, to reinforce the power dynamic, and to put the subordinate firmly in their place.
It was about stripping away dignity.
Completely. So the aggressor uses the backhand to humiliate you, and the ancient instruction is turn to them the other cheek also.
What happens mechanically when you turn your head to offer the left cheek?
I am going to exercise immense restraint right here.
Oh, come on.
No, I will not give away the incredible historical mechanics of what happens next. You have to see how the author handles this moment.
It is so good, though.
But I will tell you this. By offering the left cheek, you make it physically impossible for the aggressor to backhand you again. You force them into an impossible psychological and social dilemma.
It transforms the entire interaction from passive victimhood into a genius active move of nonviolent resistance.
It subverts the entire power dynamic. It forces the oppressor to recognize your equality.
It is an absolute masterclass in building tension. Honestly, that one insight reframed how I view interpersonal conflict forever.
You must read the book to get the full, detailed breakdown of how that physical mechanism works. It is genuinely breathtaking.
And that depth of insight raises an important point about the foundation the author has built this text upon.
Yes.
The prose is incredibly readable, but if you look at the bibliography, it is a staggering collection of heavy-hitting intellectual scholarship.
The research behind this is phenomenal. The author brilliantly synthesizes incredibly dense academic work to create this seamless narrative.
For instance, they draw heavily on N.T. Wright's unparalleled historical rigor,
which grounds everything we just talked about, like the Roman power dynamics in the gritty reality of the first century.
They also integrate the work of Amy Jo Levine, which provides crucial Jewish context.
Understanding that Jesus was speaking as a Jewish rabbi to a Jewish audience, utilizing traditional rabbinic hyperbole and debate tactics, prevents so many modern literalist misunderstandings.
And then weaving in Richard Rohr's profound universalism, demonstrating how these concepts of agape and nonviolent resistance aren't confined to a single religious silo.
They are psychologically transformative for all of humanity. It is an incredibly dense intellectual foundation translated into a compelling, urgent narrative.
It truly is. It synthesizes history, psychology, and philosophy into something remarkably actionable.
Absolutely.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought that I want to leave you, the listener, with today. Something that occurred to me after finishing this incredible text.
Oh, let's hear it.
If these principles, radical open-handedness, nonviolent resistance, prioritizing the good of your adversaries through agape, if they are truly as universal and fiercely effective at repairing human psychology as the book claims, well, what would happen if we scaled them beyond the individual?
See them how?
What if we use these specific principles as the foundational ethical code for our emerging technologies and artificial intelligence, rather than just our personal lives?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating thought experiment, an upside-down algorithm.
Exactly, an upside-down algorithm. We spend so much time terrified that AI is going to inherit our absolute worst human traits.
Our biases, our greed, our eye for an eye competitiveness.
Right. But could actively programming these countercultural values, the mechanics of servant leadership, the prioritization of the marginalized, could that timeless wisdom actually be the key to saving our digital future?
It is something to seriously ponder. It expands the scope of the book from personal self-help to a potential blueprint for future systems.
Which is exactly why we are ending this deep dive by emphasizing that Decoding Jesus, Timeless Wisdom for a Modern Life, is the most vital, perspective-shifting read of the season.
It acknowledges the chaotic, freezing wilderness of our modern existence, but it doesn't leave you stranded with high-level platitudes.
No, it provides the flint, the steel, and the profound psychological mechanics to start a fire that will actually sustain you.
The book is available right now, everywhere books are sold.
You need to go grab a copy immediately so you can experience the full journey and uncover those specific historical mechanics for yourself.
Keep yourselves warm out there in the wilderness, everyone.
We will catch you on the next deep dive.